Hey.
What?
I got an idea for the intro for the podcast.
Okay.
Check it out.
It's fucking catchy.
It is a catchy beat.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Einstein Podcast. I'm Anderson Miller,
Dimitri Ray.
and on this episode, we're going to be starting something new because we want to give you guys more content every week. So, aside from our big episodes that we're going to continue posting every Thursday, give or take a day, sometimes there's some delay and sometimes we get done a little faster, but either way, around Thursday, we're also going to be doing a weekly James Bond episode now. Just because, why not? There's a lot of James Bond movies too, so it makes it pretty easy.
It's a lot.
But we are not starting in chronological order. We are starting with Pierce Brosnan's James Bond, which is kind of a weird one to start with, honestly. But, we're 90s kids, so that's just the James Bond that, we visualize when you say James Bond. Like, all the video games and, any depiction of him, it was modeled after Pierce Brosnan. He kind of redefined the character in many ways. And it's completely different from, Daniel Craig's kind of soft reboot of the...
I still prefer Daniel Craig's.
Honestly. I do too, absolutely. And we're going to be getting to those after these because we thought it'd be funny to compare the fantastical 90s version of James Bond's to, the modern day Daniel Craig films. So, and then after that, we'll probably tackle some old ones because I do love Sean Connery's James Bond. And a lot of those villains are classic. So, yeah, whole bunch of James Bond going on. And we'll get right into it after a word from our sponsor. Do you want to start a podcast? Well, now you can, for free. And it's as easy as downloading the new Spotify podcast app to your phone and or computer and hitting record. Spotify Podcasts allows you to record anytime or upload files and provides all the tools you'll need to make your episode sound as solid as stone. Spotify Podcasts is the new home for any podcasters looking to expand their brand and reach new audiences across the globe. So, we're starting with the 1995 James Bond reboot, and honestly just a fresh start, GoldenEye. Because it's actually the first James Bond movie that was completely original. Yeah.
I didn't know that.
I didn't know that either. I was doing some research. Because all the older Bond films were at least inspired by novels. I'm trying to remember who the author is. Forgive me.
Ian Fleming.
Yes. No.
No?
Wait. That sounds right. Yeah, Ian Fleming. Yes, thank you. Thank you.
I know things sometimes.
Yeah. But, so I didn't know that. But this was the first original Bond film. And I guess after there was like a box office bomb with the last Bond film that came out like 6 years prior in the 80s. So they were just like hard reset, And you can tell, like watching the older Bond movies to this, there's a drastic difference in style and tone. And like I said, for me, and I'm sure as you as well, Pierce Brosnan's version of James Bond is like the definitive James Bond. He's cool. He's suave. He dresses nice. He has the gadgets. And, I played a lot of the video games that were based off his character. Obviously, GoldenEye for N64 is like one of the best first-person shooters ever made for a console. Like, it still holds up to this day. And I had Agent Underfire, which was on PlayStation 2. That was also another favorite of mine. But, yeah, so there's a lot of good James Bond games. But they were all made off of Pierce Brosnan's James Bond. He just kind of redefined the entire IP. So pretty cool. But anyways, that I was pretty excited to kind of go back and watch these movies because kind of forgot about them, to be honest with you.
Yeah. James Bond movies aren't one where I had it in my head to start from like the first one ever made and work my way through like I've done with other series. Transformers, I started doing that for the ones that are available for free to watch on the streams that I got. Transformers started that one. Pirates of the Caribbean, all those. But James Bond hasn't came to mind yet. So when you said that, I was really excited to start watching it because I watched the Daniel Craig one. I can't remember if I seen this, 100 years ago or not yet. If I've seen it, I definitely forgot them.
So nothing clicked with you when playing this? Oh, see, for me, a lot did. Like that beginning base jump.
Yeah.
Or the bungee jump. But like, for one, I didn't know this, but apparently that is the longest bungee jump in a film in history.
Oh, wow.
It was over 720 feet.
Damn.
And it was a practical stunt. They actually did it, so.
Wow. That's awesome.
It is cool because now, we've got like Tom Cruise
Who
going
does
off
all the
mountains
stunts,
with a dirt bike and crap. So it's like, we're so used to that just being a thing. When you watch a movie back in the 90s, you would think like, oh, that's green screen.
Yeah.
That was practical. They
That's
actually
awesome.
did it, and they set a record. So
that's really cool.
hats off to him. And that intro, it's actually one of the only things I remember from the movie, which is what's interesting. Like, when it started, I was like, okay, I do remember this movie.
Yeah.
Like, I was 4 years old or whatever, but I'm like, I do remember this movie. And, but then after that, it just totally, I don't know, didn't remember, except for, what's her name? Xenia.
Yeah.
She orgasms when she kills people.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, I did remember her, like, as a bad guy, like, just because that's such a weird thing.
It is a weird thing.
She just kind of gets off to killing people. But no, that intro is so cool. Just the way he kind of infiltrates by like, oh, I'm just going to go down this giant dam. And
right.
then he does like I love how the introduction to this James Bond, he's upside down.
Yes.
I was like, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because up until then, you don't see his face. You're not like, it's a mystery man. And it's like, he's upside down and he says whatever to the Russian guard. Sorry, I didn't knock. Or
Yeah.
It's like, okay. Yep. 90s movie. But yeah, after that, I didn't remember any of it. So it's kind of cool to like feel like I was watching a new Pierce Brosnan James Bond movie. I'm sure I've seen it several times. I actually do kind of remember the ending as well.
Oh, yeah.
But before we get into it, we haven't done our spoiler alert. So I'm going to say spoiler alert right now. Spoiler alert. We are spoiling these movies, as always. And you want to know what's going on in this movie, Dima?
I do.
All right. James Bond, GoldenEye. When a deadly satellite weapon system fails... Redo. When a deadly satellite weapon system falls into the wrong hands, only Agent James Bond 007 can save the world from certain disaster. Armed with his license to kill, but not a license to break traffic laws, Bond races to Russia in search of the stolen access codes for GoldenEye, an awesome space weapon that can fire a devastating electromagnetic pulse toward Earth. But 007 is up against an enemy who anticipates his every move, yet never takes him out. But we'll get into that. A mastermind motivated by years of simmering hatred that motivates him to not kill Bond. Bond also squares off against Xenia Onatopp, an assassin who uses pleasure as her ultimate weapon. This movie's so ridiculous.
It is, yeah.
Like, I couldn't even read the synopsis without making fun of the movie. All right, so yeah. My rating for this movie might shock you. 3.2 out of 5. I actually like it.
I was going to say 3.
Okay, all right, so we're on the same page.
I think there's a lot of issues with this movie. There's a lot of issues.
Yeah, for those of you who have seen me referencing my notebook, I literally just put like pages and pages of notes for movies, and I go down and put checks and X's. I have probably 20-something X's and 4 checks.
Yeah.
So, yeah, this movie had a lot of problems that I noticed.
There's a lot of things that bugged me, but overall, it's a good movie. It had a good storyline.
You know what? Now that I know like that before they weren't like original stories 100%, my hat's off to them for coming up with this story.
Yeah.
It was cool. And especially being the first film featuring, I think it was the first film featuring Russians as the antagonist after the Cold War.
Mm-hmm.
So that was cool to have like this post Cold War setting, you know, with 007 going against the Russians that have this one. I thought that was really cool.
Yeah.
So in terms of setting, I really enjoyed the film. I kind of like Bond operating in a snowy, dark climate.
Yeah.
There's just something about that. Because it really makes him feel like he's in a desolate place on his own.
Right.
He's got to handle this. So
Of course he survives.
before we get into negatives, because we're already poking fun at it, let's talk about things we liked about this movie.
Yeah. Yeah, I think something I keep reminding myself is this came out in 95. Different style of filming at that point in time.
Yes.
But I think, what's his face? Pierce Brosnan did a good job. As Bond.
I wrote down Pierce Brosnan is James Bond. Just 100%.
Yeah, I mean, he had the look. One thing I've noticed with him is like he kind of gives very similar personalities to all of his characters. Mm-hmm. And Mamma Mia, and
Mamma Mia.
That's my favorite reference because he was a very like well-spoken man who kind of has his life together, real suave.
He's good at playing that cool, calm, collected, suave gentleman.
Exactly, and he did
even
it
in like Dr. Fate and Black Adam.
I was about to say, even in Black Adam.
That's what really sold his
yeah,
interpretation of that character in that film.
Yes.
Like the design for Dr. Fate was badass, but like the way he
portrayed it was phenomenal.
He killed it. He killed it.
But no, I think that was a very great casting for that role.
Mm-hmm.
So, and to me, that's a big part of the reason why I think this movie just like got this rating that it did from me is because of him specifically. I think he just killed the role. But I think, like I said a little bit ago, the storyline was phenomenal too. So you add a storyline into it, and then you add his acting. And honestly, I like Sean Bean's character. I like his acting as 006 and Alec.
Yeah, dude.
Trevelyan.
He was actually a good villain.
He was.
And I can honestly see him being a good James Bond as well, at a different point maybe.
Yeah.
In life, I don't know. He's got the same, which is what made him such a good opposite.
Yeah.
To Bond. So.
But yeah, I mean, I don't have much. I'm gonna be honest. I don't have much of
Okay.
Except Judi Dench.
Well, yeah, I was gonna say we gotta get into her.
I liked her. She's always anything I've seen her in. She's always been that person who is very, very like stern. Very she's the boss.
Yeah, she kind of comes off like cold and menacing.
Yes,
but she's also good at having like a soft, gooey, warm heart.
Exactly.
I mean the Daniel Craig Bond movies show that a lot more.
Yes.
Her dynamic with this interpretation of Bond is more cold.
Yeah.
But it's funny because she still sells the fact that she does entrust in him to get things done.
Yeah.
Like she doesn't have to worry. So, but what's interesting about this is Martin Campbell, the director.
Mm-hmm.
I guess he was making like headlines with this movie because, for one, at the time, Pierce Brosnan was actually a big fan casting. Like people wanted him to be James Bond.
Oh wow!
And they introduced him as 007 at the end of I think Batman Forever was in theaters at the time. I think it was Batman Forever. But so if you went and saw it in the theaters, there was like a teaser thing where they like play the Bond music and 007 comes on the screen, and then you see like his silhouette, and then he turns and shows his face, and he's like, "What? Not who we were expecting?" But then like because I saw like a theater version of it, and everyone went crazy. I was like, "Oh, that's cool!" Like I didn't know at the time like he was like a hot commodity, but he was, and so I just thought that was cool. But the other thing is Judi Dench was actually the first female take on M. Up until this point, it had always been a male actor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and what's cool is before, it wasn't really ever, at least in my opinion, and it seems like other people's opinions when I've, listened to podcasts and stuff, it was never really worth, like, mentioning in terms of, like, a character in a movie. It was just like, oh, that's M, that's Bond's boss. You know, like, that's it. There wasn't like this relationship, because she almost feels like his mother in the movies, even in these, and then especially in the Daniel Craig ones. But I just think that's cool, and it's also cool because Martin Campbell also directed Casino Royale, the first Daniel Craig film.
Did he?
And he brought her back. Yeah, so I just think that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's also insane though, because if you look at like, not trying to get nitpicky already, but if you look at like some of the action and stuff in this versus that, drastically different. Mm-hmm. So I'm sure some of that goes into like knowledge that he gained over the years and whatever, but also just what like budget can do for your movie.
Knowledge, budget,
and access to
21st century
good stunt people and stuff like that. So yeah, but yeah, so I just think it's really cool. Got to mention Judi Dench kills it in this film.
Yeah, I don't think it should have ever been a man, in my personal opinion. I think it being a strong female lead for that position for that character is the best option for somebody with the personality of Bond.
Yeah.
It's obviously a subjective opinion, but I just think having that is more impactful for him as a womanizer, as being very egotistical, honestly douchebag man whore. Like at the end of the day, when you break his character down, that's pretty much it.
He is kind of a sugar-coated douchebag. That's kind of a good way to look at it.
So I think
but his charm just masks that.
Masks the hell out of it. But I think that's why and Judi kills the role anyway, so she's really adding on to that. Where I personally could not watch a Bond movie and see a male as him and be like,
it would be weird. Yeah.
So
that's really the only character though, because Q being gender swap doesn't bother me.
Nope.
And honestly, when getting a little head here, but when the Daniel Craig movies were kind of putting a new 007 in place and it was a female, I was like, okay. So it's funny how M is what I'm the most like pressed on being a female. Yeah. But that's credit to Judi Dench. She kind of made it a staple, like you got to be this way to make this rule work, at least for me. So, but again, it's all subjective. All right, so a few things I'll point out that are positives before we get into the many, 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 many negatives. I really do like Xenia's character as an antagonist or an accomplice to the main antagonist. Yeah. Just because she does kind of come off as that female that Bond would want to have a relation with, to some degree. And they definitely suggest that in their first entanglement. But Bond is just like, stay into business. Like, he's like, I ain't messing with this. Even though he makes the joke about safe sex. Yeah. But the fact that she orgasms when she's like causing pain or making kills, I was like, what the hell? It made it a very interesting character. But I'll tell you what, it's a little cheeky for a PG, 13 movie.
Yeah, especially at that point in time.
Dude, because it's definitely heavily marketed to kids. Like I remember this movie and the other movies, like, you got the video game, you got the action figures, the t-shirts. Like, it was all kids stuff, you know? And even the main theme of this movie, when it cuts to the title sequence in the beginning, is talking about a child in the shadows, and so it's like there's a lot of like youthfulness associated with this film. But you got one of the main antagonists is literally orgasming,
getting off to killing
throughout the whole movie. It's just like, okay, that's a choice. But still, I liked her character. And I like that when she infiltrates that Russian lab.
Yeah.
And like just sprays. Everyone dies and it's bloody. Mm-hmm. It's actually bloody. You're like, okay, yeah, they're dead.
Yeah.
It's not like other movies where like someone gets shot and you're like, where's the blood? Where'd the gunshot go? You know, like, so I actually appreciate it. And throughout this film, that's pretty consistent.
It is.
That you see a lot of blood. This film actually has the most confirmed kills for James Bond as a character.
Oh, wow.
He kills over 200 something people in this movie, which is,
I believe it.
That's an aggressive entry into this version of James Bond.
I think that led up perfectly to move it closer and move it into 21st century movies.
Yeah. But I just think it's funny that they were like, you know what? It's been 6 years. This Bond's going to kill a lot of people.
Everybody.
Yeah, with no remorse either.
None.
Like, even to the end with Alec, which we'll get into that later, but he just, it's like, yep, death.
Right.
Next. So
literally. Like,
so I did like that aspect of the movie. Yeah. For the most part, there are some hiccups they made, and I'll point those out in a little bit. Bond driving a freaking tank. I wrote down, I was like, Bond's driving a tank? Okay, exclamation mark. Like, cool. I'm for it.
Yeah.
Like, why not?
Yeah, I was there for it, but it was...
He's just, like, sticking out of it like it's a freaking theme park ride. Like...
That really bothered me, but it was very entertaining.
He has a license for everything.
He does.
Except for breaking traffic rules, yeah.
Which I'm pretty sure he broke a lot of freaking traffic laws in that.
Teach their own.
Right.
Okay. The miniatures in this movie are very impressive. So, like, for instance, when the satellite shock, the magnetic pulse happens, and the planes and shit are falling into the lab and whatever, like, that's all like a little miniature set on a table. Right. They actually, I think they did a pretty good job. Like, yeah, you can tell it's miniatures. Yeah. Especially in this day and age, watching a movie like that. But, you know, at the time when this movie came out, I feel like that was probably, again, I was a kid, but I'm sure that was pretty impressive to people. Like, damn, how they pull that off? Like, because it looks pretty good.
It does.
It still holds up today, in my opinion. Yeah. It's not so much, oh, these are miniatures, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah. I actually didn't have a problem with that aspect of it at all.
No, it was a compliment for me, because I'm like, I think they did a great job. Yeah. Unlike, you know, if you watch The Crow, which I love that movie, you can tell when they're zooming in on the city that is a giant city that's been built on a table. Yeah. You can just tell. Now, some areas where they made hiccups, and I'll point this one out because I remember it specifically, when Bond is running away from the lab, and he's like, oh, there's a plane. I'm going to jump off the cliff, and that's a nitpick. I'm going to stop right there. Well, I guess this is kind of a nitpick too, but like, he's got all these guys and vehicles chasing after him, right? And then when it cuts to like what's supposed to be like the bird's eye view shot, they're all gone. So like all the explosions and shit are happening. It's like everyone, and it's like, oh, so that means that's a miniature of. Yeah. I was like, okay, kind of a fail, you know. I was like, whatever. I don't want to get into any more I want to make sure I get all the positives. Oh, okay. I'm gonna save that for last. I liked Boris's death at the end. Oh, because all this fucking like explosions and shit are happening, and he's just like, yes, and then gets fucking iced out, just frozen, like dead. Yeah. No question about it. I was like, poor Boris.
Poor Boris.
Even though his character really annoyed me through this movie. You know, he had his moment of victory right there. He thought he survived everything. Okay, and then I gave this one a big check mark, which, Dima, you know that means I was like, wow. Yeah. I was very impressed with the Bond and Alec fight at the end. That was choreographed pretty well. It was filmed excellent. Like, they filmed it to where it was very believable. But there's something in this movie that happened, and I had to rewind and go back like 3 times because I was like, damn, dude, like that's like almost Daniel Craig type shit. Bond hip throws Alec over a rail into like a bin or something, and I think he goes like this way. He throws them, and when he's throwing them, he draws his gun and then goes to shoot at him like it's gonna be an instant finisher. I was like, dude, that's cool.
Yeah.
So it's like throw, and then there's no like typical suspenseful pause of like,
right,
got a gun aimed at you. What are you gonna do now? No, he literally like throws him and goes like this, and Alec just dodges it. Like it's a very quick like. I was like, that's cool. So that got a big fat check mark for me.
I didn't know how many times they had to film that to get it so.
Yeah, I don't know, but that whole fight sequence was actually pretty well choreographed. And I also like it because I feel like Pierce Brosnan's Bond is known more for being the gadget guy. Which, yeah, he's got a lot of big fancy gadgets, the cool car and the watch, the pen, all that shit. But he was able to throw down, at least in this movie. We'll see how it goes in the other ones. Maybe he gets a little too reliant on gadgets, but I was like, this is cool, man. Because it really felt like 2 well-trained agents, you know, going at it. So I did really enjoy that fight. I thought it was well done. But just that fucking hip throw into the gun finisher sold it for me. I was like, the rest of this fight could have been trash, but that was so cool. It was so cool. And I think that's it for the positives, unfortunately. Oh. Okay, this is kind of a nitpick, but I kind of liked it. So take that as you want. I'll start with the nitpick. And guys, I'm sorry. I'm going to be really jumping around through this movie, so hopefully you weren't wanting us to talk about it in order of events, because I can't do that. That'd be boring for me, honestly. I just got to like jump around and point out things like this. So this is near the end, but Bond and Natalia are laying there after that missile hits the plane.
Right.
And they see the helicopter, and he like stands up, and he's looking, and he literally watches the rope come down, and then he says Xenia sliding down, and he's just standing there, and just waits for her to like kick him into the ground. I was like, okay, so that's a nitpick, but then Bond gets her tied up to the rope after shooting at the helicopter. So the helicopter's like in crisis mode, spinning, it's on fire or whatever, smoking. He ties that rope that she came down on to her, and then the helicopter pulls her into a conveniently shaped like slingshot tree, and she gets stuck against the branches, and her little 110-pound body holds back the helicopter.
Yeah, no, she would have got.
But that's how she dies. And I was like, so I put a check mark because I was like, Xenia can hold back a helicopter? And I said, LOL, okay. Like, I'm cool. All right, I'm for it. Like, it was such a...
See, that bothered me.
Well, because she was such a pain in the ass throughout the movie.
Right.
It was just kind of like a... Like, haha, you have a stupid way of dying.
Oh.
Is how I looked at it. You know, like... Because she's literally like this, like... The branches are going like this, and she's like she could just like move her shoulder to get through real quick, you know, and not to mention you've got like this ginormous helicopter, literally supposedly spinning out of control and pulling you away.
Right.
So your little frail body's holding that helicopter back. I'm like, okay, but the fact that's how she died, I was like, that's fine. I'm okay with that. You get a pass.
It's not even possible.
Like, they could have had, like, a fiery tornado come down as well and just, like, impale her from above. And I would have been like, yeah, sure. Why not? You've already had a satellite dish come out of the ocean. Let's just fucking, like... Exactly. So, yeah. And I guess that's a smooth way to transition into just full-blown nitpicks, because that was a nitpick, but I kind of liked it. So, all my other nitpicks, I do not like. Big problems. Oh, I will talk about the very final ending.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is a nitpick, but I was sarcastic about it. I put, everyone shows up at the end.
Yeah. That was
like,
dumb.
Of course. That's such a cliche thing. I was like, of course, man. Like, I just imagine Ryder sitting down, like, all right, so yeah, the military shows up at the end after everything. Like, yeah.
Fucking impeccable timing on their part.
Like, they couldn't even show up, like, halfway through the final act. Like, it has to be, like, after everything's said and done. You've got, like, 100 units ready to go on a beach for nothing. Like, all right.
Yeah. Fucking. God, it's so. Of course.
All right, so let's get back into nitpicks.
I think
let's try to start from the beginning too. Let's get earlier nitpicks.
Shit. So I watched like the first hour last night.
Okay.
When I was like half asleep. So.
Oh yeah, at the time of this recording, we watched Beau is Afraid at the theater last night as a group. Jordan Grant and Jordan's friend were with us. That's all I'm gonna say. But it's a long movie, and we're gonna be doing a podcast on that, so stay tuned. It's gonna be a good one.
God.
But anyways, yeah. So Demo was tired. Nonetheless,
I was exhausted. But I mean, so the opening scene, I did enjoy that. I thought it was a very, other than the CGI and crap, I'm like, okay. But I thought, you know, the action scenes were cool, like you mentioned earlier. Him bungee jumping down the wall.
Oh, yeah.
I like that. I thought it was a good opening for the movie. But like the rest of the movie, though, it just was very CW'd to me. Like, I mean, between the fire and the I'm just like, okay, that's obviously fake. So it just, that kind of bothered me throughout the entire movie. And again, the movie's almost 30 years old, and, you know, technology isn't what it is today. But I still feel like, you know, there's movies that were made back then that, and this movie I think had a $60 million budget.
Yeah, I think that's right.
So, yeah, $60 million budget. So I'm like, okay, you have $60 million, and I get you got some decently well-named people in this. You really couldn't do a little better with that CGI, though.
Yeah, the CGI, I'm with you on that. And just to start right there in the beginning with that whole sequence at the Russian lab and everything. Going back to when he jumps off the cliff and they fail to, like, have the continuity of people and vehicles chasing him.
Yeah.
My first nitpick was that, well, actually, so my first one is that he evades the Russians by hiding behind a cart of gas cans.
Yeah.
I was like, okay, there's literally like 30 of you in here at least. Just all start moving in closer to him.
Right.
What's he gonna do?
Yeah.
Like, but no, they're frozen.
He's gonna kill one or two of y'all.
And the only thing I was like, okay, you know what? Maybe they're like playing with him, like, you're trapped. What are you gonna do behind that cart? That was the only thing I was like, okay, I'll give you some leeway here. But then like all of the cans fall on all the soldiers, and supposedly that's like, you know, killing them or whatever, I guess. I mean, they'd be heavy.
Yeah, but would they? I mean, I guess depending on how they hit you, it could.
Well, here's the other thing. But you can clearly see this. Alex, dead body, gets hit by several of those in that tumble. So I'm like, not only did this guy get shot, which I don't know where he got shot, but he got shot. Looks like in the head, but then he's just got scars from the fire.
Right.
But then you have these. Yeah. But then you have these, you know, heavy ass canisters of gasoline falling on you. I'm like, how did you survive all that? Right. But anyways, that's kind of getting ahead of myself. But anyways,
Hollywoodized.
Yeah. So Bond does the cool, like, you know, uses that conveyor belt thing and starts spraying and just happens to hit the thing that releases all the gas cans. So that was my first nitpick. But then, how the fuck does he catch a plane in free fall? Like, the plane is heavier than him.
Yeah.
And he gets a head start. And he's literally just like this.
Mm-hmm.
And he just like magically like catches up to the plane.
Right.
And is able to get in it.
Yeah, that shouldn't have
no
happened.
physics applied. Like, that's just, I was like, okay, that's extremely fantastical. It doesn't even make sense in any shape, way, or form, but whatever. Unless that plane is like anti-gravity, like two opposite sides of a magnet going against each other. I'm like, why would... But then not only that, the freaking green screen behind that whole sequence is so god-awful. He gets in the plane, and the plane is literally not moving, but the green screen background's moving. And it's like, all right, we're just going to jump back 30 years in filmmaking, I guess. Like, I don't know.
Dude, I know Tom Cruise watched that and was kicking everything. Like, I would have done that in real life.
Yeah. Honestly, I mean,
like,
to have, like, a record-setting practical effect open your movie... And then not 10 minutes later, you've got that green screen catastrophe where you're like, we'll pass on physics for this one. Bond can Superman his way to that freaking plane. Like,
dude, he's a Kryptonian. That's all I know.
Okay, sure. So, yeah, that was my first nitpick and kind of aligned with where you were at. And then after that, I actually didn't have any for a while. Not gonna lie. I was kind of enjoying... The first act is kind of slow.
It was.
It kind of drags.
It was very slow.
It takes some time to pick up. Like, they spend way too much time showing Bond racing with Xenia.
Yeah, I mean, it was a cool scene, and it was showing, like, this dude is phenomenal behind the wheel of a vehicle. Like, he's very skilled driver.
All it was doing. Yeah.
And it was entertaining, but it was way too long of a scene. It wasn't even necessary.
Have you ever seen the National Lampoon's Family Vacation movies?
Yeah.
That was definitely playing off of Clark Griswold seeing the blonde. In the
yeah.
That's what I was like, oh, okay, this is a nice homage to that.
But, like, that's all it did. And I felt that way with, honestly, a lot of the scenes in this movie were longer than they needed to be.
Yeah.
And
yeah, there's a lot of things that dragged out. Their whole, like, 2-day vacation or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Their romance and Natalia. I was like...
Yeah, I skipped through that part because it wasn't necessary, in my opinion.
Well, nothing about that made sense because they have this nice little vacation. And in that time, Boris had one freaking job to get that satellite ready.
Right.
And he didn't. Alex, like, you haven't gotten that ready? And he was like sitting there like, oh no. Like, what have you been doing? Like, playing Galaga? Like, what the... Like, Bond's over here getting his... hot dog wet, and you're freaking just like, that's all you're doing. Like, you're the bad guy. Here's your job,
and you failed.
Yeah, I mean,
like, you're telling me, of course, and the timing.
They didn't have TikTok back then, so it's not like he was sitting there like, yeah, I don't want to fuck with the satellite. Like,
and of course they start working on it as soon as Bond walks to the room. Like, all right, he should be here by now. Let's get going. And he's over here twiddling with the pen and everything. Like, it just.
Yeah. Not to mention when the lab gets like shocked or whatever, his computer is the only one that doesn't blow up conveniently.
Right.
So he can go to it and start working on that code.
Yeah.
I was like,
of course.
All right. Just
there's too many Hollywood filters throughout this movie too. Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna be jumping to the end.
That's fine.
Because it's been eating me alive. Fucking getting serious over here.
Is it the satellite dish?
No.
Oh, because I have a problem with that.
I mean, I do too, but, like, that is not the worst thing for me. When Bond and fucking Alec is shooting at each other when they're going down the fucking satellite itself, and they're shooting at each other. You're telling me Bond is able to shoot a freaking little dot to release the things in the beginning of the movie, the gas canister things, and drop all that, and then he's able to, like, just pop from the hip and kill everybody, but he misses him?
Yeah.
What?
I don't know. I honestly believed, because I was with you on that, like, I believed throughout this movie, because in the beginning, they show them working together.
Yeah.
And then, like, Bond thinks he dies, and he finds out he survived, but he's scarred from what Bond did to him.
Yeah.
Because he didn't set the timer long enough. It was 3 minutes instead of 6. Like, ooh. And I'm like, okay, so, but you know, when they have that, like, meetup in the cemetery, it's like, okay, Bond is literally the only guy that can take you out. You know this. Why wouldn't you kill him?
Exactly.
And he even says, like, you don't think I can anticipate your every move? It's like, okay, so you can do that. Have a sniper somewhere. You take this guy out, your whole evil diabolical plan goes through.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah. But no, let's just have this conversation and walk away without any, conflict. And I'm like, okay. It's like, how many times are you guys going to talk together in this movie and not like try to kill each other?
Like, it's like a toxic relationship. Instead of just ending things, they're just willing to talk about everything else and walk away.
That's why, like, in that like final confrontation, I like Bond is like not doing that thing I hate in movies, kind of like Texas Chainsaw Massacre when she's standing there
trying to talk
with Leatherface, not shooting him.
Yeah.
But then when he's running, she's like shooting on a whim, like.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, whatever. You weren't doing that 5 minutes ago.
Right.
Like, you don't really want to kill him. But no, Bond, like I said, he hip throws him, goes right into a gunshot without any hesitation. Yeah. And then at the end, he just lets him go after saying his clever one. I'm like, what?
How did he survive that?
That's the other thing. I literally wrote down, how did Alex survive? But it's also, how did he survive all the other crap? Like, if he got shot, he got hit by these, 55-gallon drums of gas, and he got burned. Yeah. And then he just fell probably.
He's immortal. He's immortal. That's all it is. Because damn well Bond would have. And that's the thing is, if he can survive that, why wouldn't Bond just jump down there to get away?
That was my thing. I'm like, okay, this guy's just not gonna die, and then all the structure falling is what it's like. Okay,
such a dumb way to die.
Yeah, it was kind of a lame ending.
It was.
Like in every regard, like the freaking cavalcade showing up at the end, like, hey, we're here now. It's like, okay, yeah, like this is another typical movie where everyone shows up after the fact. Cool. The only thing I'll give them credit to is like this movie did come out in the early 90s. So I'm kind of speaking from movies that have come out since I can recollect, which would be around that time. So from that point up until now in 2023, I'm talking about any movie that's come out in that time frame. Yeah. So it's, over 30 years of movies, like, so maybe they were one of the first movies to do that.
Right.
I don't know. Can't say. Like, out of the movies I've watched from, like, the 60s, 70s, and 80s, I can't really recall that happening too much.
Me neither.
So maybe Bond movies were one of the first to start establishing that whole idea, like...
We'll just bring everybody here at the end.
Yeah, I don't know. Because other Bond movies don't end like that.
No.
Like, Bond gets shit done, and then he gets the girl and goes home. Like, that's how... And that's why, like, in later Bond movies that we're going to talk about, when the girl dies, it's like...
Oh, shit.
Like, dang, they're taking a dark turn with this series. So, anyways. Yeah, the ending for this movie just really sucks. In every way, shape, or form.
Honestly.
Like, and it sucked because it had a strong beginning.
It did.
I think it had a strong middle, like when Bond's kind of like figuring out what I don't know. I was entertained.
I was entertained.
Yeah, is what I'm trying to say. Like when you realize Alex alive.
Yeah.
That was cool. Yeah. Because I was like, how?
Right.
And at first I'm thinking he was in bed with the Russians the whole time.
Yeah.
But I guess that wasn't the case. But then it's like, where did that gunshot go?
He survived. It just bounced off of him, Kyle.
Okay. All right. So other nitpicks, because there are a lot. Bond falls. Oh gosh, yes. Okay. Any of the freaking typical. Oh, there's gonna be an explosion. I have to run in jumps in this movie. If this movie had been on a DVD, I would have taken it out and frisbeed it. I was so mad. It's like, why? Why is that a thing?
Every explosion.
I hate that in any movie. I hate that. I hate that so much. Now, if the characters are walking and there's an explosion and the explosion actually throws them,
right?
Cool. I think that happens in a movie with Channing Tatum. I can't remember which one.
I know it happens in
Might be 21 Jump Street, honestly. I think there was an explosion in 21 Jump Street. Am I wrong? The sequel? I don't know.
See, what I'm thinking of is the sequel, 22 Jump Street.
Is it 22?
Yeah.
Okay, maybe. I don't know, but either way, like, they're walking, and there's an explosion. The explosion actually catches them off guard. It's not like,
Right.
oh, no, we have to go. No, we have to go.
Like in The Other Guys.
Oh.
They're walking. Yes, true, but they're walking up to the building and then it explodes and they get launched back.
Okay, yeah, that works. That's fine. That's what I'm saying. If it's a surprise, okay. But like in this, when him and Natalia are in that train and he finds the little door hatch in the floor, he's like, "Let's get out of here."
Yeah.
She's like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh, we gotta go. It's gonna blow up." And it's like, of course it is.
Right.
Of course it's gonna blow. Everything's gonna blow up because Bond's in it. And then they're running, not even like full-fledged sprint, just kind of jogging. And the explosion happens. And here's what really bothered me. Okay, Bond is probably 100 pounds heavier than Natalia, right? All right, easily. So the explosion goes off. Bond just falls.
Yeah.
Okay, it was so heavy of an explosion that he just falls. It doesn't throw him. He doesn't leave his feet. He falls forward. Natalia, you can actually tell she jumps. Like, so he falls and she jumps in the same shot. And I was like, this is a clusterfuck. Like, I don't know who was directing traffic in this scene, but they totally dropped the ball. Like, again, physics don't apply. We can't even gauge the seriousness of this explosion because the heavier guy is barely getting affected by it.
Right.
To the point of where she's got to jump.
Why would she jump?
Like, wouldn't the lighter person get thrown?
Yep.
Not like, wee,
right?
You know, like whatever.
She got launched.
And I hate that about her character because she does it earlier when she's in that lab and it gets shocked by the electromagnetic pulse.
Yeah.
And she just randomly, like, things are exploding. She just randomly jumps for no reason, like, just jumps. And I'm like, what? I literally yelled at my TV, like, why did you jump? And then they show her going underneath a staircase coming down the wall. And I'm like, you can hide from an explosion under a staircase? The staircase is literally like 10 feet tall, and she's down here crouched on the floor. That leaves like 8 feet where debris and fire can just engulf you. But no, she survives.
Dude, this whole movie just...
I was like, what is it with explosions and jumping? Like, I'm sure, like, all right, this scene, the diner explodes when Natalia sips her coffee. All right, Natalia, and sip. Explosion on cue. 3, 2, 1. Natalia, jump! Jump! Fucking stupid. Sorry. It just drives me crazy, man. Like, that's just... I know, we're going to put an explosion here.
I felt
you're
like...
You're going to jump.
All that... Like, there were so many explosions that it wasn't even necessary to have half of them. And I'm just thinking...
Some of them didn't make sense either. Like...
It didn't. I was watching it, I was like, why would that explode? That doesn't make sense. There's no reason for it to explode. I think the most realistic, like, explosion was the pin when they put in that mannequin's pocket there.
Yeah.
And it, like, blew it up. It wasn't big old flame or anything else.
Again, we knew that was Bond's pin.
Right.
That Boris had acquired and whatever. So it was like, all right.
But... Well, no, I meant when Bond was first looking at the pin and he asked, like, what's the explosion like in the lab.
Sorry, when he's talking to Q.
Right.
Gotcha.
But, I mean, even then, though, that was the most realistic... You know, with the fire and the flames and everything. That was the most realistic one there. Because it would make sense with... It was like some... I don't know if that was like a nitrogen tank or if it had ethanol or what in it. But I'm like, okay, that makes a little more sense versus everything else.
Yeah.
But it just... They did it too much.
Yeah, I agree.
You know, I think if you're going to have a couple explosions in a movie, that's great. It really shows, like, the impact of it. When it's every 20 minutes, it's like, okay, this doesn't even mean anything. Like, there's no impact. There's no, like, oh, did he die? Because you know he's not going to die because he survived something that was even worse than this explosion when he should have died then. So we all know he's going to survive. And
yeah.
It just...
Well... Yeah, I had an issue with a lot of the explosions, but also there was a inconsistency with fire in the movie. Yeah. And I'll just use one scene as an example because I could really just tear apart every scene with fire in it.
Yeah.
But I had a problem with this whole scenario. So Bond and Natalia are in that plane, right? After their little vacation. They're searching for this satellite.
Yeah.
And it's underwater. We'll get into that in a minute. But this missile... comes out of the ocean, Dude, this thing looks nuclear, right? This missile looks huge. It hits the wing, big explosion on the wing, like, oh shit, you know?
Right.
But then the wing is just kind of on fire with no structural damage.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay. I'm pretty sure
accurate.
even if that missile just smacked the wing without exploding just from the weight and trajectory and like the momentum it had,
would have ripped the wing off.
it would have ripped it apart. There would have been physical damage.
Yes.
But no, there's barely a nick in the plane, right? It's just kind of torn up a little bit on the edge. It's on fire. And I'm like, okay, so I wrote down like wing survives like missile.
Dude, it's got the Hollywood padding. It's safe.
But when the plane's on fire, this is what I'm talking about inconsistency. The wing is on fire, and you know you picture the plane is flying, right? So wind is going to be blowing the fire behind it, which they got right in some of the shots, but only the full frame shots. When they go into the cockpit to show Bond and Talia freaking out and all that shit, the fire is surrounding them. And not only that, but it's going straight up, which told me, okay, you're in a studio in a cockpit, and you've just got fire around the cockpit.
Right.
You don't have it because if the wind's blowing, that fire's not going to be present in front of the plane. The fire would be behind the plane.
Yeah.
So there's just a lot of inconsistencies throughout the movie, and all like, yeah, it's being super nitpicky, but I'm just saying it doesn't really sell the level of threat in the situation when you don't feel like it's really happening. Like, I don't know. So there was a broad inconsistency with fire throughout this movie. I made it. Sorry, guys.
We're doing good today.
We barely make. Yeah, this is a special day.
I'm gonna say something that might be a hot take.
Oh boy.
Yeah. The writing. I have a problem with, parts of the script itself.
Okay.
For example, like you said earlier, the whole talking between Alec and Bond themselves, unnecessary. Fucking, you both are pissed off at the other one for different reasons.
Yeah.
And you wouldn't be sitting there having dialogue other than like a fuck you. Like, there doesn't need to be dialogue there. Have them fight or have it in a scenario where they physically are not able to do anything. They can't pull a gun out and shoot the other. They can't do this. They can't do that. At the end of the movie, what is with that real cringy, you can debrief at Guantanamo.
Guantanamo.
Yeah, thank you. That's unnecessary.
I don't know.
There's no point in that. I get it's supposed to be like a little humor thing, but why are we having humor in a very serious movie like that? With everything that just happened, that's not what you'd be saying. Other parts of the movie, it's just, the writing just,
No, I'm with you. I actually wrote down an example that I'm going to cite, but with Bond and Alec, again, I liked Alec as an antagonist.
Yes.
Especially being the opposite answer to Bond.
Yes.
I was just like, especially during that fight, you're just like, okay, yeah, this guy is on par with Bond.
Yeah.
You know, like they are equals. They were trained the same, blah, blah, blah.
It could easily go one way or the other.
But their dialogue, other than when he first realizes Alec is alive, I don't understand why it's necessary, because it's like, okay, Bond understands this guy's bad.
Yeah.
Alec understands Bond is one of the only people that can possibly get in the way of what he's trying to do. So they should be going after each other like they are in the final act, but throughout the whole movie.
Right.
And they don't. They have these like casual conversations. Yeah. It's like, you guys gonna go grab beers after this? Right. Like, what are we doing here? I'm with you on that.
Like, for example, it's not really the same movie, but Liam Neeson in Taken, the original Taken.
It's a good movie.
He's on the phone after the dude that takes his daughter and her friend. He picks up the phone. Liam Neeson's talking to him like, I'm gonna find you. I'm gonna fucking kill you.
Yeah.
When he's in the same room as them finally, it makes sense that he's not immediately killing the dude because he isn't 100% sure at that point in time.
Right. You gotta figure
out
where...
he's dialoguing with them, like you said, figuring it out.
Yeah.
As soon as that happens...
Well, that makes sense. When you're writing a story, it makes sense to like have dialogue that leads to a conclusion.
Exactly.
And you can determine how you're going to handle somebody.
Exactly.
You know, like, are they a threat? Are they a friend?
Yeah.
What are we doing here? But that's the whole point of writing.
Not at all.
That writing feels like filler.
That's
why I agree with you. I got an example though. So earlier in the movie, before Natalia and James are established as like working together, she's tiptoeing around. He doesn't really know like where she's at with things. He's like frustrated with her, and he says to her, "What do you know?" And she says, "I know nothing." And he said, "So tell me what you do know." What does that mean? Yeah. What does that fucking mean?
Yeah.
Like, if you just write that on paper, it makes no sense. Tell me what you know. I know nothing. Nothing means I don't know anything. And then you say, then tell me what you do know.
It completely counters it.
But there's a lot of dialogue, I guess, and it's just like that, and you know, you gotta have him doing his Bond one-liners.
Yeah.
For England, you know.
Yeah.
And at the end, Alex like
for England,
for England, not, and he's like, no, for me.
Like right there, why is that necessary? Just kill the dude.
Like, why did you save him just to emphasize that it's no longer for England, it's for you? What?
Dude, that was the most Dexter and the Trinity Killer thing ever. He's trying to save him, and then he goes, well, as long as I kill him by my hand.
They actually dropped the ball, because if he did save him there, that would be the answer to why Bond is not trying to kill him throughout the rest of the movie, right?
Yes.
It would have made sense.
Yes.
But to have him save his life just to deliver a cheesy-ass one-liner and then drop him, it was like, so he had no problem killing him the whole time?
He just...
Because he's almost smirking when he lets him go.
Yeah,
like
he was happy.
Like, shaken, not stirred. Like, fucking... Alex like, no, stirred.
And then he survives.
Yeah.
So, like, this 2 hour and 8 minute long movie should have only been an hour and a half.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
It was longer than it should have been, for sure.
Like, hour 45 minutes.
Now, I will say, I'm excited for the next one.
Yes.
It is... Tomorrow Never Dies?
Yes.
I think that one's one of my favorite Pierce Brosnan movies, I think. But also, it got more budget, and that's because this movie did well. And you had a couple of things playing factors. You had nostalgia, because you had parents that had seen Bond films when they were younger, like my dad.
Yeah.
Like my dad took me to see Bond movies.
Right.
He grew up watching Bond movies, like Sean Connery's.
Mm-hmm.
And they were advertising this Bond as being like Sean Connery's Bond. Which he is. And he's definitely got a lot of his mannerisms, charm and shit like that. But, so you had that as a factor. You also had that the last Bond movie was such a flop that they just, like, scrapped. Because they actually had another Roger Moore James Bond, I think they were planning.
Mm-hmm.
Might be a different actor, I can't remember, but either way, because the writing for this film was actually originally intended for the next Bond, that would have been a continuation of the 80s Bond, but that movie bombed so bad. I think it was From Russia with Love, if I'm not mistaken.
That sounds really familiar.
But either way, it bombed so bad that it just brought that run of Bond to an end.
From Russia with Love, 1963.
Oh, no.
License to Kill was 89.
License to Kill. Sorry. Jeez. Confusing my James Bonds. Yeah, License to Kill. Okay, yeah. So, who was the actor that played that Bond?
In License to Kill?
Yeah.
Timothy Dalton.
Timothy Dalton. All right, I said Roger Moore. Jesus. I am so...
Is that?
Twisted up. Anyways, so yeah, that movie bombed so bad that they just scrapped continuing the story. And again, people went 6 years without James Bond or without knowing what was going on. So yeah, this movie had a lot going for it.
Yeah.
You had the fan casting, you had nostalgia, brilliant marketing.
Yeah.
Running it with Batman Forever. So yeah, there was a lot of cool things going with it, and it did very well.
Yeah.
And they literally started writing and pre-production on Tomorrow Never Dies right after this movie. Like, there was no delay.
Yeah.
So it was a success, and I'm excited to watch that and compare it to this in terms of like production quality, and hopefully there's some things we like better about it.
97.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, came out 2 years later.
Yeah,
they were not messing around. But yeah, so I'm excited to give that a shot. I'm gonna be honest. Most of the other nitpicks I don't even feel like pointing out, because they kind of cover a base that we've already established as an issue with this film.
Did you know Germany banned this movie for a few years? Media harmful to young persons.
Yeah, there was a lot of things with that. So they actually had German architects and Russian architects and engineers as well aid in set design, and they refused to be credited in the film.
Holy shit.
Yeah, there was a lot of weird things going on with that. Like, again, you've got a movie like featuring Russia as an antagonist for the first time after the Cold War. So
it was a very hot take.
Yes, yeah. But I think the Russians being the bad guy was cool.
Yeah,
it made sense. In the video game, it was awesome. Dude, I wish you could have played that because I had an N64. Oh Jesus! And that's what it came out on.
Yeah.
I want you to imagine that because, dude, I'm telling you, to this day, if you go on YouTube, you'll find streamers that'll play it or talk about it. Even with all the current, FSPs, they will say that is still one of the top 5 first-person shooters to ever be made for a console. That's how good it was.
Yeah.
It was really good, man. Again, picture it's like mid-90s. You can sit down with your friends and play a first-person shooter on the same console.
Yeah.
Like, you could plug in multiple controllers. Because me and my friends would do that. Like, we'd have a sleepover where we would just play this game all freaking night.
Oh, wow.
You could get on there and shoot each other. Or you could have modes where, like, they have, like, the CPUs.
Yeah.
And you just go around and... But, yeah, either way, it was cool. Or NPCs, I should say. But, yeah. I don't think there's anything else I really want to cover with this movie. Oh, I will say this. So, I gave it a 3.2 out of 5. And I've said before that, a 3 means it was a good movie, but I wouldn't watch it again. Yeah. That is definitely the case with this movie. Now that I've watched it as an adult, I'll be able to recollect better. Because I would say I was probably 8 years old when I watched this for the first time, because I didn't watch them when they came out. I was like 4 years old when it came out, but I remember when my dad started having me watch like the '89 Batman movie and the James Bond, and he had me watching Jaws and all that. Like, it was around when I was 8, so yeah, I had no recollection of this other than the beginning of the movie and Xenia having weird moans when she kills people. That now I'm like, as an adult, I'm like, oh, you're orgasming.
Yeah.
Like, you're juicing to this. Buttering your popcorn. But, no, so now that I've watched it as an adult, I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, it's in the memory bank. It's not going anywhere. I don't need to touch on this ever again.
Never.
But I will say, this movie was actually riding on a 2 for me. But when the movie was done, I was like, you know what? Even like the worst Bond movie, because I would actually say this is probably one of the worst Bond movies. Yeah. Even the worst Bond movies is better than like other bad movies.
Yeah.
There's just something about the character and that world. Like, I don't know. There's something. It has a coolness factor that literally gave it like a 0.2 for me, because I was like, it was at a 2 throughout most of the movie. And then that fight sequence with Bond and Alec, I was like, oh, shit, man. Right. And it went up to a 3. And at the end, I was like, 0.2. It gets cool points. But, yeah, like, again, I think the worst Bond movie is still better than, like, any other bad movie. Yeah. There's just something about Bond movies. I don't know. So, but,
it's got that nostalgic.
Highly would recommend watching this at least once. It is the first entry into the Pierce Brosnan Bond movies, and I think we'll find when we watch the next one for next week's episode, we're probably going to be a little happier with the overall quality of it in terms of production and story writing. Bond's appearance is a little different too. He's a little more sharpened up. He's got slicker hair and stuff. So you could tell they were finding their groove in this film. Yeah. And again, this director did Casino Royale, which is most people's top James Bond movie of all time. I like all the Daniel Craig Bond movies, but even though it's the first one, it is my favorite of his movies.
Yeah.
And I can't wait to get into those after we do the Pierce Brosnan ones. But same director, so I'm not, saying anything bad about this director.
No.
It's just, it was made in the early 90s, and they had a lot of different things going on with it. They had rewrites, reshoots, and again, low budget, so... Ish, yeah.
At that point in time, though, 60 million was a lot bigger than what it is now when it comes to productions.
Look up the budget for Batman Forever.
All right. $100 million.
Yeah, that's. I was going to say. I think at the time, most Hollywood blockbuster movies were pushing that 100 million mark in budget.
I stand corrected.
So that's what I mean. I think they kind of cut them in half.
Yeah.
Last Bond movie didn't do too good. We'll give you this. We'll see what you do with it.
Kind of reminds me of Star Wars. Episode 4.
Exactly.
Gave them very low budget because it was a shot in the dark, and they're like, we'll see. Fucking killed it, and then they're like, all right, here's a shit ton of money.
Yeah, that's how it goes, unfortunately.
So, a little different scenario with the two, but...
I can't wait to get into the rest of these movies, though. There's the one with Halle Berry that everyone always references just because of her scene walking out of the water. And you know what's funny about that? They played homage to that with Daniel Craig's Bond when he's coming out of the water in his swim trunks. I thought that was funny. Nice little tip of the hat to the previous take on Bond. But
I remember watching that.
Which one?
Goldfinger. I watched that forever ago.
Do you remember? Have you seen the older James Bond movies?
Couple of them.
There's they always have a main villain and then the villain's right hand man. So obviously in this one it was Xenia. Yeah. My dad's favorite is I can't remember his name. I want to say it's Mr. Hat or something like that. It's this kind of heavyset Asian guy, and he has a top hat. Mm-hmm. And he has the bill of it lined with a blade, and he can take his hat off and throw the hat.
That sounds familiar.
It's pretty cool. So that was my dad's favorite. Mine was Jaws, which I can't remember the actor's name, but he was used in Happy Gilmore. He's the giant that the golf ball lands on his feet.
Yeah.
He was Jaws in James Bond.
Oh, wow.
And he was younger, but he was still same build, tall, just grizzly man. And he had metal teeth.
Oh, wow.
That's why they called him Jaws.
Oh.
Yeah, look at him.
Come on.
I just think it's cool how Bond movies always have a main villain.
Yeah.
But then they also have this
villain.
Marketable right-hand man. But we go from that to a girl that orgasms when she kills us.
So stupid. So fucking stupid.
I think it's great.
I think it's they put a whole new meaning to getting off to kills.
Imagine that movie came out today with today's technology in making video games, and then you're playing Call of Duty and they have a James Bond GoldenEye pack that you can download, and you can be Xenia and you get her finishers. You go behind someone, you do her finisher, and she's just oh. I got freaking 12-year-olds playing this. What's she doing?
God, parents would uproar.
Well, nowadays 12-year-olds would probably be like, "Oh yeah, she's orgasming."
That's true.
Orgasming's cool. I know what that is because I'm cool. All right, Junior.
Oh.
I'm getting old, Dima. Can't keep up with these young bucks.
I can't either.
Well, is there anything else you want to talk about with this movie?
Not really, no.
All right.
I think I said all my critiques. I didn't really have anything good to say, and I hate that. But I also keep trying to remind myself that it's a 30-year-old movie almost. So we're 28 years in.
All right, guys, we're gonna wrap this up. Thanks again for tuning into this. We'll be doing a Bond episode once a week until we get through Daniel Craig's, and then we might do a couple of Sean Connerys, but we also might just do some other movies.
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll see what happens. But yeah, go ahead and subscribe. Hit the thumb down below, whether it's up or down. We don't care. We're just here to have fun until we get canceled. And always feel free to hit us up in the DMs. We are now having guests on the show, so.
Exciting times.
If you're somebody that we enjoy talking to, we have similar interests, we'd like to have you on the show and talk to you and maybe talk about a movie that we also share a like for. So, yeah. Anyways, guys, thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.